My name is Millie, and I am 20, almost 21 years old. I need help from someone not in this psycho town. Not many kids can say they have a superhero for a father. My dad was an amazing man. He was the coolest person in the world. Known as our town's superhero, I guess you could liken him to one. Dad doesn't wear a cape, and I'm pretty sure he can't fly. But he does use his newfound abilities for good, bringing down every psychopath who tries to play supervillain. We are pretty small, impossible to find on a map or even a Google search. Dad has been protecting us way before I was even born. Nobody knows how he and a number of others acquired their abilities. There were rumors of a chemical explosion in the power plant 17 years ago. Some people even believe my dad is from a different planet, while others are convinced he is part of natural human evolution. All wrong and a lot more easily explained. Why don't the rest of the world know about our town? My best answer would be because you can't. On the outskirts of town, a mental barrier exists. It is invisible, only affecting you when you leave. I've only experienced it twice, and both times were horrific. It's like having your mind picked apart, like drowning inside your own skull, every part of you bleeding away until you are nothing, a soulless, mindless shell sitting on the side of the road with barf staining your shirt. Every memory of this town and its inhabitants is torn from us. Last time I remembered nothing but my name. It didn't take Dad long to find me. Last year, a popular Twitch streamer managed to sneak inside. But, just like the mental barrier, everything that happens in this town stays. He was pretty pissed when his stream failed to go live. The guy forgot our existence as soon as he stepped out of town. Do you know the Sims 2 game on Nintendo DS? I never played it, though I did watch walkthroughs on YouTube. We are kind of like Strangeville, minus the aliens. Anyway, the reason why I'm writing this will come clear. I don't have long, and I'm sorry for over-description. I want to get everything down as clearly as I can. I want to tell you about my father, Starman. He's just like a real superhero. When I was 7 years old, my father single-handedly stopped the Cerebral Drainer, a psychopath who took the lives of 10 innocent people in the town square. I remember watching an episode of SpongeBob, and the TV switched to shaky camera footage of the bloodbath downtown. Dad saved a child live on local TV. He told the panicking crowd everything is going to be okay. They believed him. I believed him, watching through my fingers as he tackled the Cerebral Drainer to the ground. I admit I was scared of him at first. Human beings aren't supposed to have freakish glowing eyes with the ability to rip through human flesh. Laser eyes are fictional, but this is the closest I've seen to the real thing. Dad explained it to me in detail, but I still can't get my head around it. The mutation is most prevalent in the eyes and acts kind of like a geyser, but with energy. Or something like that. When I was 12, Dad took down Rat Face, a homeless-looking guy who filled the streets with disease-ridden rodents. Rat Face was more pathetic than scary. His beady eyes twitched like living things. Our town eventually began to trust my father with protecting us. In exchange, we were to protect his secret from the rest of the world. Dad was known as the best superhero and father by day, and family man and loving husband by night. It wasn't out of the ordinary for the local press to be swarming our door when I got home from school. Since town kids can't leave unless they're either granted special permission or are the children of villains, the rest of us continue our education until we are 25 years old. The idea of leaving town and immediately forgetting our identities isn't exactly appealing. We call it the third senior years. First senior years, 16 to 17. Second senior years, 17 to 21. Third senior years, 21 to 24. After stepping off the school bus, I was already nauseous and wrestling a pounding in the back of my head, the type of pain Tylenol cannot fix. The Myers household is fairly small, just a regular house in suburbia. We even have the white picket fence. Pushing through a crowd of my dad's adoring fans, I made sure to flash my perfect smile at the cameras. My phone vibrated, a text popping up on my notifications. The vultures are at your door, lol. Should I release the hounds? Cam, a first senior boy who lived across the street, with two adorable and feral chihuahuas. I sent back a skull emoji. The last time he set them on fans and press a like, I was unfairly grounded for 3 days. Shoving my phone in my pocket, I forced my way through the crowd, trying and failing to ignore their stares. As Starman's daughter, I was yet to reveal the mutation I had inherited. I could tell they were gunning for it, their wide and frenzied eyes raking me up and down like a piece of meat. Maybe they were expecting me to start shooting flowers out of my ass. The older I was getting, the less patient the town was. Dad told them in a local press conference that I was just a late bloomer. I almost died of embarrassment. The girls at school ran with it, of course, asking me if I was a late bloomer for anything else. Channel 7 News was waiting for me at our front door, immediately sticking a microphone in my face. I was told not to talk to the press. Dad made that very clear in his 100-slide PowerPoint presentation, detailing every potential fallout scenario if I accidentally said the wrong thing. But I was tired, my head was pounding, and the camera flashes were making me feel woozy. Channel 7 News are obsessed with my family, almost to the point of it being scary. The anchorwoman, Heather Carlisle, who was a usual suspect, was already yelling in my face. I was yet to forgive her after she suggested live on air that I was a little slow. It was 2 a.m. and I was half asleep. The neighbors were robbed, and I was dragged out of bed for my close-up. Because of course I was. I noticed 2 things, even when I was slightly out of it. Heather had definitely camped out in our front yard. She was wearing the exact same clothes from yesterday, a slightly creased black dress and a matching blazer. Heather was also missing a heel. One of them was odd. I noticed a single rose petal hanging from her fringe. There was zero reason for this woman to be doing all of this to get inside scoop on Myers' family business. Millie Myers. I got full named after straight up ignoring her and trying to shove past her army of camera guys. Heather wasn't playing around. I backed down when she situated herself in front of me with one single heel clack. Is it true your father is currently interrogating the son of the infamous Six Eyes? I swear a little bit of saliva hit me on the cheek. Six Eyes was the opposite of my father. Dad strived to protect our town and everyone in it. Six Eyes, who was locally famous for the mutation that came with his ability, sought to destroy it. If Dad could be compared to a superhero, Six Eyes is more of a villain. The proportions of his face are all messed up. I've only met him once, and Dad made me wear eye protection. It only takes one single glance at this guy, and he's got you. Obviously, it's not like the movies. Six Eyes can't make mindless armies, but he can greatly influence town leadership, slipping into the mayor's office with nobody batting an eye. The problem was, if Six Eyes covers up his mutation, he looks like your average guy, which puts him perfectly under the radar. Nobody suspected the community college professor, Marcus Kane, to be a psychopathic maniac with the ability to contort the human brain. Dad did manage to apprehend him, only for Six Eyes to break out of prison 2 weeks later. His 20-year-old son, Cartwright, wanted nothing to do with him, intentionally leaving town and stepping over the barrier to forget the town and his father ever existed. I'm not fully sure how the mind wipe works, but I do know that spending too much time away from town causes physical symptoms. I think Cartwright is drawn back every 2 to 3 months to avoid suffering an aneurysm. He had even legally changed his name to get as far away from his psycho father as possible. The boy was only in town for a few weeks on vacation from college. However, over the last few days my father had reasons to believe Six Eyes was in contact with his strange son. I twisted around, maintaining a wide smile. No comment, I told the cameras. The anchorwoman nodded slowly, thrusting her microphone further into my face. I had to hold back a sneeze. But your father is interrogating him now, correct? Millie, can you tell us what techniques he is using? She was trying to get me to spill or trip over what I was saying so my words could be taken out of context. Dad didn't get mad easily, but his smile did start to slightly falter when I told Channel 7 our family's business. Shutting the press down, I shook my head, making sure to stretch my lips into a big cheesy grin. Just like my dad told me, I cleared my throat. Rest assured Cartwright is in good hands. I can promise you all that. I nodded at the crowd, making direct eye contact with each of them. Dad said if I wanted the crowd to believe my earnest words, I had to look into each and every eye and mean it. That's what I did. Cartwright Kane is not responsible for his father. I cannot speak for him, but I can assure you he will find 6 eyes. I held my breath, pausing for just enough time for the crowd to register my words. And bring him to justice. When I turned to open my door, the spell was broken, more questions thrown at me. Millie, is it true you have not inherited your father's mutation? Someone else screamed in my face, and I choked down a yell. Millie Myers, can you tell us more about your father's interrogation? I shrugged. I don't know, he's just talking to him. Millie! A wide-eyed redhead followed me, stumbling over my mother's rose garden. When he carelessly stamped on a blooming rose, I resisted the urge to shove him back. He looked like an amateur, a college kid maybe, armed with just his iPhone and a dream. The guy got close. Too close for comfort, swiping at my jacket. His breath was just coffee and cigarettes. Are you aware of the photos floating around of you and Kai Hendricks, the son of Oculus? Can you confirm that you aren't in a relationship? I could feel my smile twisting into a grimace. Someone snapped a photo of us drinking milkshakes in the diner. I can't fully go into it right now, but Kai and I weren't exactly hanging out. I don't think that's appropriate. The guy had the nerve to wink at me. A younger woman threw herself in front of him. Miss Myers, can we talk about your brother? I stepped away from her. Nope. She followed and I backed away. But this reporter was more forceful, less smiley. She wanted a story whether I liked it or not. The woman clicked her fingers, gesturing for a zoom in, followed by a pan to the windows upstairs. Thank God I remembered to draw my curtains. We haven't seen him in a while. Her lips twisted into what looked like mock sympathy, as if the bitch actually cared. Stepping closer, I swore her eyes were narrowing. Is there a reason why your brother does not come outside the house, Millie? Ignoring her, I opened the door, stepped inside our house, and slammed it behind me. Inside was supposed to be a comfort, and yet part of me itched to be in the open air, surrounded by reporters. Letting myself breathe, I dropped my backpack and pulled off my jacket. There was a folded square of paper tucked into my pocket. I pulled it out and ripped it into pieces. There were exactly 1,095 tally marks carved into our front door. With a rusty nail, I scratched another tally, crossing a group of 4. 1,096 days. I'm home, I greeted my twin brother, averting my gaze from him as usual. Ethan Myers was born 3 minutes after me. We weren't classed as identical twins, but Mom was convinced we were. Both of us had thick brown hair, bearing our mother's soft features. While I kept mine in a strict ponytail, Ethan's had grown out lighter and curlier than mine, hanging in hollow eyes. Ethan was the Myers twin who was not in the town's spotlight. My brother was in his usual place, sitting on the couch, knees pressed to his chest, half-lidded eyes glued to the corpse of our TV. The screen had been hollowed out a long time ago. I dragged myself into the kitchen and filled a glass of orange juice, took a quick sip and headed over to my brother, pressing the drink to his lips. Ethan didn't respond for a moment before his lazy eyes rolled to me, life erupting into his expression. He gulped it down, juice trickling down his chin. When I withdrew the glass, he shot me a grateful smile. Thanks, Mills. He held up his right hand, just like when we were little kids. High five. I ignored his childlike grin, hollowed-out eyes penetrating right through me. Ethan was never looking at me. He was always looking over my shoulder, but when I followed his gaze, there was nothing there. I stepped back, my gaze trailing the ceiling. Where's Dad? Ethan's eyes traveled back to the TV, his lips pricking into a smile. Basement, he said. Dad is interrogating. I nodded, pulling my switch from my bag and dropping it into his lap. It used to be Ethan's. In fact, he had carved his initials into the back. You can play with this, you know. I forced out, trying to stop my hands from trembling. You don't have to keep. I turned to the shattered TV screen, my heart catapulting into my mouth. Ethan didn't look at me, his gaze boring into the TV. He didn't respond, so I headed towards the basement door. but not before my brother let out a hysterical giggle. When I turned to him, Ethan was 20 years old, laughing at invisible cartoons. "Do you expect me to play with no fucking hands?" I didn't or couldn't reply. "Hey, Millie," Ethan hummed when I pulled open the basement door. The chill that followed set my nerve endings on fire. My brother's voice was deeper, no longer the childish giggle I'd gotten used to. In the corner of my eye, his head turned towards me. Standing on the threshold for a fraction of a second, I think part of me wondered if Ethan's mind had pieced itself back together. "Mom wants juice too." My twin's voice was suddenly so small. "Can you get her some?" I pretended not to hear him, heading down to the basement, ignoring how cold each step was. The best part of my day was visiting my father while he was working. I held my breath, easing my way down each step. "Hey, Dad," I called, dragging myself through the dark. I always made sure to announce my presence. "Dad," I pulled my lips into the biggest, cheesiest smile. "I'm home." "Pumpkin!" Dad's voice echoed from the bottom of the stairs. "How's my favorite girl doing?" Moving further down the stairs, I could hear screaming, wailing, sobbing. There were specific rules I had to abide by when stepping inside the basement. I had to be extra quiet if my father was doing Starman business. Over the years, though, Dad had relaxed the rules a little. When I pushed through plastic sheeting, my father had already opened up Cartwright's head. It's not like I was surprised. He'd moved away from the interrogation stage a long time ago. Starman stood in a simple suit and tie, a white coat draped over the top. My father was young for his age, dark brown hair and pale features. Cartwright didn't look so good, lying on his back, half-lidded gaze glued to the ceiling. I could see sharp red spilled across the floor and the bed he was strapped to. Starman loomed over him, cradling the boy's jerking head between blood-slicked gloves. The closer I got, I could see the exposed meat of the boy's brain leaking from the pearly white of his skull. Closer. Cartwright's body was quaking, his wrists straining against Velcro straps. My father's fingers gently stroked across the pink of his brain, tiny sparks of electricity bleeding from his index. Starman's grin widened, and I watched the villain's son writhing under his touch. I could see the tiny sparks of electricity running from Dad's fingers, forcing his victim into submission. The villain's son's eyes rolled back, a wet-sounding sob escaping his lips. He was still conscious, and could feel everything. Starman lifted his head, his eyes finding me. "Sweetie, how was school?" He let go of Cartwright's head, delicately changing his gloves for brand new clinical white ones. "Your summer school teacher called about a certain test you have been trying to avoid." Dad tutted, swiping his bloody hands on his coat. When Cartwright tried to wrench from the bed, he knocked the kid back down with a laugh. "Millie, I did say, there will be consequences if you flunk summer classes." Dad let out an exaggerated sigh. "Yes, I know you would rather spend the days playing with your friends, but you were the one who failed all of your midterms." He gestured for me to come closer with a blood-drenched glove, and I did. Starman prodded a single finger into the raw flesh of Cartwright's skull, and the boy screamed, writhing, blood running thick from his nose. "Do I need to take your phone away, How about the senior trip to New York? Millie, I don't have to sign the permission slip." He turned back to the villain's son, hanging over the boy with a laugh. "What do you think, kid?" He cleared his throat. When Dad nodded at me, I laughed too. "Young Mr. Cartwright, the human brain does not have nerves, so I don't know why you're screaming. It is quite embarrassing for a boy of your age." He slapped the boy's cheek playfully, and Cartwright wailed. 1,095 days, I thought, watching my father torture the man. 1,095 days since Starman walked into our house, burned down our door, and announced himself as our new father. I was 18 years old, and I had plans. I had gotten to my first choice college. Mom was going to grant me special permission to go out of town. Ethan and I were watching TV in the living room, and there he was. Starman, with his signature grin, standing between the melted remnants of our front door. Stella, our little sister, squeaked in delight. "Starman," she jumped off of the couch. Ethan gently dragged her back, holding her to his chest. "Hey, Mom," he yelled, his voice shaking. "There's someone at the door." Starman chuckled, taking a step inside our hallway. "Oh no, I'm not here for your mother." 1,095 days since he murdered our mother, lasering her head cleanly from her shoulders when she threw herself in front of us and begged him to take her. There was wet warmth running across the concrete floor. I barely noticed, hopping over it. 1,095 days since Starman burned our little sister alive in front of our eyes. Starman didn't want 3 children. He wanted 2. 1,095 days since our father nailed wooden planks over the door, announcing Ethan and I as his legacies. Ethan started to spiral. He tried to escape out his bedroom window, and then more dangerously, jumping off of the roof of our house, and that just made our father angry. He burned a hole in the TV and then hollowed out the screen. Starman just wanted a son and a daughter. That's what he told my brother. He could not procreate because of the mutation causing his ability, but he had always wanted children. Starman promised us he was going to be the best father anyone would ask for, and he was. 100 days after murdering our mother and sister, Ethan and I were plunged into the town spotlight. "These are my children," Starman told a crowd of flashing cameras. He wrapped his arms around the 2 of us, pulling us closer. "Ladies and gentlemen, I would like you to meet Millie and Ethan Myers from my first marriage." Starman addressed the crowd with earnest eyes. "I know what you're thinking, and no, these 2 are little rascals." He ruffled our hair a little too hard, and I made sure to laugh and smile and not cry. "Millie and Ethan do not share my mutation." His lips spread into a grin. Yet, that word had been hanging over me since the press conference. Yet, presently, Dad was crawling in my head again. "Smile, Millie." I did, smiling so much, blood pooled from my lips. Dad promised neither of us would be sad again. We wouldn't fear him or anything else. In fact, we were going to be happy, smiling, perfect children forever. His shining legacies he would dangle in front of the town on our 21st birthday. It was his birthday present to us, and I was so excited. The closer I was getting to my father, I could sense him fashioning my smile wider and wider until I couldn't breathe. He didn't care that I was bleeding, that my eyes were stinging. All he cared about was that I loved him as my father. "Come to me, Millie." I forced myself forwards, swallowing vomit filling the back of my mouth. If I screamed, I would end up like my brother. Ethan was on a permanent time out until his 21st birthday. Starman was yet to forgive my twin trying to stab him at Thanksgiving dinner. Dad said Ethan's mental state was puberty, but I was more akin to believing it was a mixture of trauma, as well as our father's attempt to poison my brother with his mutation which almost killed him. Dad was smart enough to stop the procedure before he killed his only son. I blinked, my legs buckling, footsteps faltering. Sometimes I think I can pull away from his influence. "Millie Myers," Dad hummed, skimming his finger across a variety of scalpels. Cartwright watched him feverishly. "Don't make me ask again, Pumpkin." Still, I felt my thoughts start to melt away, replaced with artificial happiness. Our father was the best dad in the whole world. With that thought slamming into me, I skipped over to my father with a grin. Around him were rejects, corpses piled to the ceiling, limbs and heads and torsos contorted and merged into one mass. The bright yellow rotary phone on the wall caught my eye for half a second, before I was forced to look away. The one rule in the house is, do not go near the phone. I should say now just to make it clear. Dad or Starman is not a superhero. He's a narcissistic psychopath who expects to be called one. He expects us all to play along with his carefully woven story, the town full of mystery. In reality, we are what I think is an abandoned government experiment. My father does not have abilities from an unknown source. He is a disgraced scientist with nothing to lose, and a whole town to play with. There is no mad disease, I have seen it myself. Our beloved superhero Starman has physically driven these people to insanity. The cerebral drainer and rat face had been ripped apart and put back together again. Dad was saving them for a quiet day. The Myers basement was my father's workshop. When I joined his side, he ran his fingers over Cartwright's skull. I was surprised when the villain's son let out a sudden, hysterical giggle, his eyes rolling to pearly whites. "What are you doing to him?" I asked, intrigued, running my hands over the boy's restraints. This time, Cartwright's body contorted into an arch, maniacal laughter escaping his lips. When his back slammed into metal, the ground rumbled. "Now, what is amusing, Starman asked the boy in a low hum. Cartwright responded by spitting in his face, shrieking with giggles. Dad cleared his throat, swiping blood from his cheek. "That's not funny," he turned to me. "Heads up, sweetie." I was keenly aware of several instruments floating above my head. Cartwright's body jolted, and they hit the ground. Dad turned his attention to me. "What is your nightmare of a brother doing, young lady?" I forgot to feed him. His words shattered part of his influence. I felt my breath start to quicken, my heart starting to pound. Fear. Ethan hadn't moved in days, weeks, months. He wasn't eating. All he did was drink soda and juice. My brother was glued to that one seat, caught inside his own delusion. Ethan was watching TV when Mom's brains were splattered across the walls. He was watching TV when our little sister's flesh bubbled into the living room carpet. "Ethan is watching TV. I gave him dinner earlier," I said, being careful with my words. "What are you doing to the villain's son?" I pointed to the boy's contorting fingers. They turned clockwise, straining under harsh Velcro straps. I could feel the strain, a hollow sensation creeping across the back of my neck. Cartwright was trying to twist off my head like a bottle top. I was lucky to have my father's protection. Dad shot me a grin. "Well, you see, Millie," he said, shoving the hysterical boy back onto the bed. Madness. I saw it in his eyes, igniting every part of his face, running through his nerve endings. That is what made a so-called villain what we all saw on the local news. It was the loss of humanity, logic quite literally burned from the brainstem. Complete unbridled euphoria accepting insanity. I had already seen this exact look. The cerebral drainer's psychotic grin. Ratface's all too familiar and horrific chittering laugh. Six Eyes' Alice in Wonderland smile. Dad rocked the boy's head back and forth. Cartwright giggled along, his gaze finding nothing, penetrating nothing. His hands went limp, and he gave up trying to yank my brain from my skull. "We can't have superheroes without villains, can we?" "But you're not a superhero, Dad," I said, maintaining my smile. Dad made me feel crazy. He made me feel like I too was going to end up like Cartwright. "You're a sociopath playing God," Dad laughed. Now that's a tone I don't like. I was treading dangerous territory, but I needed answers. "Professor Lockhart," I said. "Was that your name?" He didn't flinch. "Millie, I will cancel your field trip." "The barrier around the town," I continued, aware of the sudden burning sensation in the pit of my skull. "It's man-made from an abandoned project called Zero." The words choked in my throat. I felt them physically dragged through my lips. They dripped down my chin in thick beads of red. Dad's tone darkened enough for me to back off. He knew exactly what I was doing. "Ask me about the boy, Millie." I reached out, poking the boy in the face. "Is he like his father?" Dad almost looked proud. "Oh no, honey, he's better than his father." Six Eyes was a mistake. His son is already setting an example. Starman nudged me playfully. "Your old man would not exist without the bad guys," he said, tracing a finger over the boy's cheek. "We're just lucky we have a town full of naive fuckwits who actually believe in fucking superheroes." I forced myself to laugh along. If I didn't, my brain started to boil. Cartwright laughed harder, hard enough to send him toppling off of the bed with a wet, meaty sounding smack. I was partially aware of my body reacting. My breaths quickened, a thick slime creeping up my throat. I think I stepped back. I think I almost screamed. I forgot his head was hanging open, half of his brains leaking out. But I don't think Cartwright needed a brain anymore. Whatever was left of it was blackened, thick, poisoned streaks running up down what had been healthy pink and gray. My dad scooped him up and plonked him back onto ice-cold steel. His laugh was fake, manufactured, programmed directly into his mind. Part of me wondered if this was his father's fate too. Six Eyes. Was he a result of my father's experiments? The crazy thing is, the more I want to scream, my chest heaving, fear starting to gnaw away at me, the stronger my father's influence is. The villain's son was stitched back up with not even a hair out of place, and thrown into the back with the other finished minions. If he recovers well, Cartwright, son of Six Eyes, will be going on a town rampage very soon. Well, he is the villain's son after all. Instead of screaming, I smiled. Dad taught me everything about cutting up humans. Human brains were so easy to manipulate. Because humans were bad, he told me. The people like my dad were better. I grabbed a scalpel, sticking it into Cartwright's hand. His whimper of pain collapsing into hysterical laughter didn't give me hope. If he reacted positively to a blade going through his skin, he wasn't worth saving. Once that thought crossed my mind, however, I really loved my dad. The mental declaration almost sent me to my knees. Go upstairs and do your homework, Dad said, wheeling Cartwright into the back room. I'll be upstairs to cook dinner in 10 minutes. I'm thinking pizza. Sure, Dad. His influence was like a wire wrapped around my throat, cutting through my mind. Squeezing. Oh, and Millie. I didn't turn around. Yes. Chocolate or strawberry frosting for your birthday cake. I froze, my smile stretching right across my face. He knew my answer. Dad baked us a cake 4 hours after I trashed the slimy remnants of my little sister. Starman forced me to peel my sister from the carpet and dump her in a trash bag. I could still smell her charred flesh hanging in the air. Starman made a giant chocolate cake and frosting. He made us eat every single morsel. Every bite was agonizing. Chocolate, Dad? I said, swallowing my lunch. Dad chuckled, and somewhere in the back, Cartwright started laughing again. Starting as quiet giggles, they became full-on heaving shrieks. Starman ignored him. That's right, Princess. I nodded, heading back up the stairs. Greeting my brother, I cranked the Alexa to full volume. I always listen to music when I'm doing my homework. Filling a glass of water, I held it to Ethan's lips with 4 fingers. Ethan downed it in 4 gulps, and then nodded in one single motion. I tightened his restraints, just like Dad told me to. Starman may be a highly intelligent psychopath, and I am fucking terrified of him, but he is yet to notice my brother is not as brain-dead as he thinks. Yes, he still watches TV, but he's also thinking. Dad is under the impression my twin doesn't need to be under his control, but Ethan has been planning. And slowly, over days, weeks, months, he has been putting together our escape plan. Starman confiscated our phones a long time ago, but I found Mom's old iPad. It has been 1,095 days since Ethan and I tried to escape our father. 900 days since we started to scratch our days of captivity into the door. 5 days until we turn 21. 4 days until we get the fuck out of here.